Yeah, it's just like regular Tim's Enthusiast Garage, but it's just me in my garage talking. Yeah, I hope someone wants to watch.
Welcome to another episode of Garage Talk here on Tim's Enthusiast Garage. Recently I did a podcast and it got me thinking some of the principles that I founded Tim's Enthusiast Garage on, I've really never actually talked about on Tim's Enthusiast Garage. I've got this YouTube channel. I know you guys love to see car reviews, but I thought I'd share just a little bit about how I ended up with a collection of 20 plus cars and a few that I flip from time to time. The answer to that question is the depreciation curve. The depreciation curve is something that enthusiasts sort of automatically understand, and we get better and better at understanding it as time goes along. And so I thought, in case you've never thought of it, or in case you were looking for what the next car was, and like if you were like me, don't have just endless disposable income to sort of buy cars with, I've always set aside a budget for cars. In other words, to buy the cars that I've always dreamed about, to own the cars that I've always dreamed about. And as a result, one of the situations that's come about is I have made a $1,500 car turn into about 20 cars that I dreamed about and always wanted to own. How did I do that? I would say at the root of it, it was understanding what a great deal was and understanding when cars were sort of about to go to that next level. And I think we can all realize that right now cars from the 80s and 90s, that motor vice era of cars, are shooting up in value. As they shoot up in value, there's opportunity there. There's certain cars that you've always wanted to own that I suggest you buy and hold. There's other cars that you may not have necessarily always lusted after or thought of, this is a car I'd like to own forever, but it's a car that you know the value of, you understand the value of, and it's a car that you could buy, own for a little while, and flip. And many of the cars on Tim's Enthusiast Garage are that car. In fact, I bought a car recently with the intention of driving it for a little while and flipping. And that is my Mercedes E350 4MATIC wagon. The S212 or W212 chassis, I think, is one of the most interesting looking and compelling Mercedes designs in a long time. And I bought that car simply to drive and then to flip. Now, I don't think that that car is necessarily going to appreciate immediately, but it's a short-term ownership proposition. I realized that they were nearing the bottom of their depreciation curve, and certainly there were a lot of cars out there with not yet 100,000 miles that were valued well less than what they were actually worth or what people were willing to pay for them. And so that's an example of a car that I think you could buy now, own for a little while, and a short time later sell for a small profit. Most of the cars on Tim's Enthusiast Garage, like my Z31 or like the 928, may not be a car you've always lusted after, but is a fantastic car and is a car that you could own for a short period of time and really enjoy. You may not find the Porsche 928 to be the pinnacle of the transaxle era of Porsche, and you may think, that's a car I'd like to enjoy for a little while, and the 928 is a pretty great car to do that with. And if you've watched my red 928 S4, the automatic car, episode from season 1, I believe, of Tim's Enthusiast Garage, you'll know that I'm pretty passionate about those cars. That was a great car to own. It's still a great car to own, and it's still a car that's kind of creeping up. It's not shot up in the same way that the 993s have. 996s are also in that same sort of area where I think now's the time to buy 996s, enjoy for a little while, and potentially sell. Now, you could own a 996 for a decade. Unquestionably, it'll be worth more than you pay for it. And if you're smart about the buying proposition, then you'll be smart when you sell it. It is important to know that all of these cars that we talk about in Tim's Enthusiast Garage do need maintenance at some point. So it's important to factor in running costs. Now, when it comes to the depreciation curve, I'm not just talking about becoming a car dealer. It's really not about that at all. I started my career as a car dealer. I had a small car lot for a while and specialized in cars that I liked. So for me, that path worked out. But in general, I think a measured approach, and even making a list of cars that are like your goal, is a pretty good idea. For me, I have a very good idea, and I've made lists across the years of cars that I really want to buy and sell. Also cars that aren't on my list, or cars that I've had bad experiences with, and I shouldn't try to buy and sell ever again. For me, Porsches have worked really well, Lotuses have worked really well, and for the most part, I now have select cars that I probably would never sell, like the Cosworth Mercedes, or the Windflower Yellow Audi Coupe Quattro, or my Esprits. I probably would never let go of those cars. But in terms of other cars that I buy and sell, like the Z31 that I recently featured, or the Mercedes I mentioned earlier, those cars I'm buying pretty much specifically to buy and sell. In other words, to buy and enjoy, maybe review on the YouTube channel, but certainly not to keep forever. And I recently bought a car that I'll talk about a little bit more on another episode of Garage Talk. I sort of went back and forth for a while on, was this a good car to buy, because running costs potentially could be very high. And so it's one of those situations where I've finally kind of gotten myself around to, yeah, this car is going up in value. It's at the bottom of the depreciation curve, and now's the time to buy it. Stay tuned for that, because I'll let you know in an upcoming episode what that car is. But in general, I think for me, lower cost cars that have sort of hit the bottom of their depreciation curve, say $2,000 to $10,000, that you can buy, own for a little while, and flip for maybe double your money, are cars that help you get to maybe that Esprit that you want. So if you're thinking, man, I've always wanted an Esprit, or I've always wanted a F355, or I've always wanted, whatever it is, most of us don't magically have an extra $50,000 or $100,000 to just invest in cars. But we probably do have a few $1,000s to buy and sell cars. And some of those cars can be quite enjoyable. I recently did a video here on Garage Talk about the 5 cars that I think are the best up-and-coming cars for this kind of a process. Now, those cars are more long-term ownership cars. It's not, most of those cars, you could buy them and sell them in a short-term sort of way, but for me, I think it makes more sense to buy that Aston Martin, for example, and hold on to it, because it's such a fortunate situation for us to be able to have that Aston Martin for $25,000 or $28,000 or $30,000 or even $35,000, because that car was so much new, and it wasn't that long ago that that car was new. That's a fascinating opportunity. So what I'm suggesting is you start thinking about the depreciation curve, realizing when cars are at the bottom, like the Cosworth Mercedes that sits in the garage, those cars were so undervalued for so long, and to some extent they still are. And so cars like that, when you see E30 M3s trading with 200,000 miles for $40,000 and $50,000 and $60,000 and $70,000, it certainly makes sense to have some of their brothers and sisters, cars in that same range that are next to nothing comparatively, and are certainly going to go up in value. Doing that can get you to your F355 or your Esprit or your Arnage or whatever it is that you really are kind of holding out for a lot quicker. The other thing to think about with these cars that are sort of depreciating, cars that were, had appreciated, and now a lot of the people that love those cars are gone. So like 60s cars, not to be morbid, but a lot of those cars have come off their plateau because the people that valued them the highest are gone. I recently looked at a 65 Thunderbird, a car that I've never really been in love with, but it's very compelling. It's that transition into that formal era of American automotive design. And that car had reached a plateau and has now kind of come back down. And so being aware of car values, and in some ways studying car values, has really served me well, and I recommend that you study car values as well, because it'll help you understand this car's at the bottom. It's time to buy this car. Haggerty has a valuation tool that I find quite useful. Not only do I insure all the cars in the garage through Haggerty, but their valuation tool sort of suggests where cars are at, and you can see that trend. They have graphs that allow you to see, is the 944 at the bottom of the depreciation curve? I think, yeah, it's since past the bottom and is now kind of creeping up. But certainly those cars are still very available and still very affordable. Understanding the depreciation curve is something that I think all enthusiasts really need to be aware of. If you don't understand the depreciation curve, you inherently could be missing opportunities to make money and own some of the cars that you think may be out of your reach. My target car, the car that I've always wanted to own, that's sort of that halo car, maybe above Obviously, the Esprit is probably my all-time favorite car, but a car that's always been out of my reach that I may never be able to own, but via smart buying and selling, one day I may, is the XJ220. And in order to get an XJ220, and currently those are $350,000, $400,000, I can't hold on to a $5,000 car or a $50,000 car forever. I've got to make that $50,000 or that $5,000 make a little bit more money so that one day I can have the XJ220 before it's worth $2 million. Now, again, that might not happen, but with careful planning and thought about the depreciation curve, you too can have your own garage filled with cars. It's made my life very interesting, and a lot of the dreams that I had as a boy have been realized. And to me, that's what it's all about. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next episode of Tim's Enthusiast Garage Talk.